Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere a little more recent in history, but no less miserable. A place of sweat, starvation, fear, and orders barked so loud you'll feel them in your bones. We're diving into what it was really like to serve as a Japanese soldier in World War II. Forget the dramatic war movies with slow motion hero shots and stirring speeches about honour. The reality was brutal, exhausting, and often fatal before you even saw an enemy. You probably wouldn't last a single day. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you actually enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see who's out there listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe put on some background noise and get comfortable. We're about to step into the world of the Imperial Japanese Army. And trust me, it's not going to smell like cherry blossoms. It's early morning. You open your eyes to the sound of a whistle that might as well be an air raid siren, because it means one thing: get up now or suffer for it. You're lying on a thin mat on a wooden floor, jammed shoulder to shoulder with the rest of your unit. There's no pillow, no blanket, and definitely no privacy. Just the stale, suffocating smell of unwashed bodies, damp uniforms, and that sour metallic tang of sweat that never really goes away no matter how much you try to ignore it. Your back is already sore, and you haven't even stood up yet. You hear the shuffling of bare feet and the clatter of canteens as everyone scrambles into some form of readiness. Your joints ache, not because you're old, but because the constant drilling, the marching, and the lack of decent nutrition have stripped away whatever comfort your body used to have. The barracks aren't heated, and if it's winter, your breath hangs in the air like smoke. If it's summer, the place is an oven that smells like a locker room left in the sun. Either way, you're not happy to be awake, and yet you have no choice. Outside, a voice is already shouting commands. Not politely, not even with basic human warmth. It's the kind of yelling that drills straight into your skull and makes you move whether you want to or not. There's no easing into the day here, just an immediate sprint into the misery. You pull yourself up, roll your sore shoulders, and brace for the next sound. The sergeant's voice calling for roll. And that's where your day really begins. The first thing you notice isn't the light, because there isn't much of it. The barracks are dim even in the morning, the thin slits of windows covered in dust, and the air heavy with a kind of dampness that clings to everything. What you notice is the noise. It's not loud in the way a city is loud. It's loud in the way a machine shop is loud, except the machines are human. Coughing, shuffling, the snap of belts being tightened, the creak of floorboards as dozens of men try to stand at the same time in a space barely big enough for half of them. And over it all, the voice of a sergeant outside, already shouting like it's the middle of the day. You slept, but not well. You never sleep well here. The tatami mat you're assigned is about as thick as a stack of newspapers, and the wooden floor underneath might as well be concrete. Your body feels it. Hips sore, shoulders stiff, neck cricked from having to curl into yourself to avoid bumping into the guy next to you. Privacy isn't a concept in this place. You're jammed shoulder to shoulder, row after row, and the only thing separating you from the next man is the fact that you're both too tired to talk. The air smells like unwashed uniforms, dried sweat, leather straps, and a faint tang of mildew from the constant humidity. In winter, it's sharp with the scent of frost and your own breath hanging in the air. In summer, it's worse. A heavy, sour heat that makes everything damp, including you. The whistle comes again, short and sharp, and your stomach tightens before your muscles do. That sound means move, not in a few seconds. Now. Your hand is already reaching for your uniform before your brain is fully awake. You slept in the bulk of it, because there's no point in taking it off. The fabric is rough, itchy, and stiff from too many days without a proper wash. There's a salty crust along the collar from where sweat dried days ago. The khaki has gone dark in patches from constant wear, and the stitching along the cuffs has started to fray. But it's the only one you've got, so you pull it tight and start working at the buttons. Your feet are bare against the wood, and you hesitate before putting them into your boots. They're not real boots, not in the way you think of them now. They're Jika Tabi, split-toe canvas shoes with thin rubber soles, the kind that make every stone and splinter a personal experience. They're damp from yesterday's rain, still holding the smell of the mud you slogged through, and you slip into them, knowing they will rub your heels raw before the morning's over. Socks are a luxury here, and dry socks even more so. If you've got them, they're thin and worn down, and you'll be rewrapping the bandages around your toes by the end of the day anyway. There's no talking during this. Everyone's too busy moving, and no one wants to draw the wrong kind of attention. You roll your bedding, such as it is, into a tight bundle and shove it against the wall. The floor beneath is already dirty again. Dust, bits of straw, and whatever grit got tracked in yesterday. Cleaning happens, but not now. Now is about standing in formation before the next whistle. The man to your left sneezes hard into the crook of his arm, and you try not to think about how close you are to him, how you've been breathing the same air for weeks. There's no space to spread out. If one man gets sick, the whole room goes down eventually. The door bangs open, and light floods in for the first time. It's not warm, not inviting. It's pale and cold, like a reminder that the world outside is no kinder than the one inside. The sergeant steps in, not to greet anyone, but to scan the rows like a hawk, looking for the slowest rabbit. His eyes flick from face to face, boots thumping on the floorboards, the leather strap of his sidearm brushing against his hip. His voice comes next, hard and sharp, calling names for roll. Each man shouts back his presence, loud and crisp, because hesitation sounds like weakness. Your throat is dry when your name comes, but you force the volume out anyway. If your voice cracks or your answer is late, you'll feel it later. Extra drills, cleaning duty, maybe something worse if he's in the mood to make an example of someone. You've seen it happen before. Everyone has. There's no warm-up period here. You don't get to shake off the morning fog. The moment you're awake, you're expected to be ready for orders, and you're expected to follow them exactly. Once the roll call is done, the sergeant doesn't waste time. He barks the order to move, and the whole group files out into the open air. It's barely dawn. The sky's still a dull grey blue that makes it hard to tell the time. The air smells different out here. Less cramped, but tinged with smoke from the cookhouse. And underneath that, the faint, oily scent of machinery from the motor pool. You stand at attention with the others, back straight, eyes forward, shoulders locked, even though every part of you is still waking up. The ground under your feet is cold and hard-packed, small stones digging through the thin soles of your footwear. The next part will come quickly. Inspection, morning drills. maybe a jog around the compound before breakfast if the officer decides you need it. You already know you're going to be sweating before the sun even clears the horizon. Your stomach growls, but you ignore it. There's no point thinking about food yet. First comes standing perfectly still while someone decides whether your boots are laced right, your collar is straight, and your rifle, still slung over your shoulder, is clean enough to pass. Any fault, any sign you cut corners last night, and you'll be singled out in front of everyone. The humiliation isn't the worst part. The punishment after is. So you focus on breathing slowly, keeping your face blank, and hoping the officer's attention lands somewhere else. Around you, the other men are doing the same. No one wants to be noticed. In a place like this, standing out is never good. The whistle comes again, and the sound cuts through the morning like a blade. It's not a suggestion. It's the next step in a day that will grind you down piece by piece, and you haven't even had breakfast yet. And then, just like that, you're moving again. The line is already forming, and you slot into your place without thinking. Muscle memory takes over. Left foot here, back straight. Chin in, eyes forward. The men around you are lined up with the precision of fence posts, each one knowing exactly how far to stand from the next. It's not because they want to. It's because weeks or months of punishment have burned that spacing into their skulls. You can tell the newer recruits because they still fidget a little, shifting their weight, glancing to the side. It won't last. That kind of movement gets noticed fast, and in the Imperial Japanese Army, being noticed by the wrong man at the wrong time is never a good thing. The officer comes into view. He's not moving fast. He doesn't have to. The speed of his walk says everything. He's got all the time in the world and you've got none. His uniform is perfect. Not just clean, sharp, every button shining, every crease straight enough to cut your finger on. The brim of his cap is low over his eyes, so you can't quite tell if he's looking directly at you or the man next to you. It doesn't matter. You act as if he's looking at you the whole time. The sergeant from earlier falls in a few paces behind him, carrying the clipboard that might as well be a loaded weapon. That list decides who's here, who's missing, and in some cases, who's about to have the worst morning of their life. The officer stops in front of the first man in the line. There's no greeting, just a barked surname. The soldier snaps out his reply, voice loud enough to echo off the low walls of the barracks. The officer's eyes flick down to his boots, up to his face, back to his rifle. A tiny nod, and he moves on. The process repeats, man after man. The names fire out like bullets, each one followed by a shouted acknowledgement. No hesitation, no slouch, no wrong pitch to your voice. The tone has to be sharp, the words clipped exactly right. You've seen what happens when someone mumbles. The officer stops, asks the soldier to repeat himself, and then makes him repeat it louder, louder again, louder until his throat is raw, and the whole line is standing there, wishing they could disappear into the ground. Your heart rate climbs as the officer gets closer. You don't move your eyes, but you can feel exactly how many bodies are between you and him. You rehearse your own name in your head, making sure it will come out clean and loud. Your palms are sweating, even though the morning air is cool. You don't dare wipe them on your uniform. The salt marks it leaves will be noticed later. He calls your name. The sound of it hits you like a jolt of electricity. You fire back your answer, sharp and loud, the syllables hitting the air like a strike of a drum. His gaze pauses for a second too long, and you feel every drop of blood in your body rush to your head. Then, without a word, he moves on to the next man. You've passed for now, but not everyone does. 3 men down, a recruit stumbles over his own reply, his voice too quiet to carry. The officer's head tilts just slightly, enough to make your stomach twist, even though it's not you. He steps forward, speaking low enough that only the first few men can hear, but the tension rolls down the line like a shockwave. The recruit is pulled out of formation. He's told to drop and start pushing. Not a set number. Just keep going until the officer decides he's done. Every soldier knows that could be minutes or it could be half an hour. The rest of the line stays frozen, pretending not to see the sweat already breaking across the man's forehead. The inspection moves on, but the mood is tighter now. You stand a fraction straighter, grip the stock of your rifle a little harder. The officer's eyes miss nothing. Boots not polished. Punishment. Collar not lying flat. Punishment. Rifle sling a hair too loose. Punishment. The logic isn't about actual military readiness, it's about control. It's about knowing that every single detail of you is under someone else's power from the moment you wake up until you collapse again at night. Eventually, the end of the line comes into view. The officer turns, his boots grinding on the packed dirt, and steps back to the front. There's a pause, a deliberate one. No one moves. No one even breathes too loudly. Then he gives the order for a full equipment check. You were hoping for a break, but of course there isn't one. And the sergeant calls out the list. Helmets, gas masks, bayonets, ammunition pouches. You have to present each one in turn, held exactly as you were taught, while the officer inspects it. It doesn't matter if you cleaned it last night until your fingers bled. If he finds a single speck of rust or dust, you're in for it. One man pulls out his bayonet, and there's a faint smear of oil on the hilt. The officer's jaw tightens, and without a word, the soldier is ordered out of line to join the other unlucky ones, already doing push-ups in the dirt. The rest of you stand there, holding your gear, feeling the muscles in your arms start to shake from staying in position too long. The sun is just starting to climb higher, and the light catches the edges of your rifle barrel. You don't dare squint. Your eyes stay locked straight ahead, staring into nothing, waiting for the word that will let you move again. Finally, the officer gives a short, clipped command. The gear goes back into place, and the formation shifts smoothly into marching order. No one relaxes. This isn't over. It's just changing shape. The morning roll call bleeds straight into drills, and drills mean running, shouting, swinging your rifle, and following orders so fast your body has to act before your mind can catch up. Your stomach growls again, a low reminder that you haven't eaten since yesterday evening. The smell of rice cooking somewhere drifts over from the mess area, but it's faint and unreachable for now. Breakfast isn't a right. It's something you earn by getting through the next round without making a mistake. And you already know the next round is coming fast. The sergeant's whistle cuts through the air one more time, sharp and merciless, and your feet start moving before you've even had the chance to think about it. Whatever comes next, it's not going to be easier. It never is. The shift from formation to the mess area isn't leisurely. It's not even walking. It's a quick, clipped march. The kind where you keep your back straight, your eyes fixed forward, and your arms swinging in rhythm whether you want to or not. The gravel crunches under the thin soles of your jikatabi, each step sending a reminder up your legs about how little cushioning you've got. There's no talking on the way, at least none that's audible. A few whispers slip between the men in the middle ranks, but even those are cut short when the sergeant glances over his shoulder. You've already had the morning roll call. Nobody's stupid enough to tempt fate before food. The mess hall isn't a hall, not in the way you'd imagine it. In some camps, it's just a long, low wooden building with a roof that lets the heat out in summer and the cold in during winter. In others, it's nothing more than a few rough tables set up under a stretched tarp. Here, it's somewhere in between. A large room with walls that have seen better years. The air inside thick with the combined smells of cooked rice, boiled barley, pickled vegetables, and the faint, sour tang of last night's leftovers. The floor's worn smooth from hundreds of boots, and there's a constant dull echo of trays hitting wood, bowls sliding, and the occasional shout from one of the cooks. You file in line, metal mess tin in hand, and wait your turn. Waiting is part of everything here. You wait in formation, you wait for inspection, you wait for food, and every time you wait in silence unless spoken to. The man in front of you shifts just slightly, enough for you to see the ladle of rice hit his tin. It's not a mountain. It's not even a generous scoop. It's a modest, practical serving, and that's the main part of the meal. Sometimes it's white rice, if you're lucky, but more often it's a mix, half rice, half barley, to stretch the supply. Today it's the mix. The barley gives it a chewy texture and a faintly nutty flavour, but also a heaviness that sits in your stomach like a brick. After the rice comes miso soup. Don't think of the miso soup you might get at a restaurant now. This is thin, almost watery. And sometimes the only solid thing in it is a few floating strips of seaweed, or maybe a sliver of daikon radish. The ladle dips into the big pot, steam rising in a lazy curl, and pours it into your tin next to the rice. If the cook's in a decent mood, you might get a little more broth. If not, you'll be tilting the bowl later, trying to scrape the last drops out with your spoon. The side dish is usually sukimono, pickled vegetables. They're sharp, salty and sour enough to make your mouth water. Not because they're particularly delicious, but because your body craves anything to cut through the blandness of the rice and barley. Some days it's pickled cucumber, some days radish, some days it's just whatever vegetables could be preserved before they spoiled. Once in a while, there's a scrap of dried fish, small enough to disappear in 2 bites if you don't pace yourself. Meat is rare, especially out here. It's reserved for special days, or when supplies happen to allow it. Most of the time, protein comes from beans or tofu, if you get any at all. By the time the tin's in your hands, the smell has worked its way into your head. You find a place at one of the long tables, sliding onto the bench with the rest of your unit. No one lingers over eating here. You eat efficiently, not because the food is especially good, but because time is short. There's another round of drills coming, and the faster you finish, the more time you have to adjust your uniform or check your gear. You lift the tin, shovel a mouthful of rice and barley in, and feel the warmth hit your empty stomach. It's filling in the way a sandbag is filling. Heavy, basic, functional. The soup goes down fast too. It's salty, and the heat is welcome if the morning air is still cold. In summer, it just makes you sweat more. You don't sip it politely. You drink it quickly. Careful not to spill any, because there's no second serving. The pickled vegetables cut through the starch just enough to keep the meal from feeling like one long chew. You think about how you'd kill for something sweet, but sugar isn't part of this world unless you're lucky enough to scavenge it from somewhere. Sometimes there's talk at the table. Not loud, not about anything sensitive, but just enough to break the monotony. Today, there's almost none. Everyone's too tired, or maybe too aware that the sergeant is at the other end of the room watching. You focus on the food, working through each bite until the tin is clean. You don't leave a grain of rice behind. Wasting food here is a sin, and not just because you'll get yelled at. You never know when the next meal will be smaller than the last. When you're done, you stand, carry your tin to the wash station, and dunk it in the big basin of cloudy water. A quick scrub with a rag, a rinse in another basin, and you're done. The water's cold, the rag smells faintly of old soup, and the whole process is quick enough that you're back in formation before you've really processed that you've eaten. Your stomach's not empty anymore, but it's not exactly satisfied. There's no feeling of comfort, no lingering taste to enjoy. Just fuel in the tank, enough to get you to the next part of the day. And that next part is already calling. The sergeant's voice cuts through the air, ordering everyone outside. Whatever warmth you got from breakfast fades fast as you step back into the morning. The drills are waiting, and the day hasn't even really begun. You've barely had time to swallow the last of your breakfast before you're back in the barracks, tin washed, gear in hand, and the voice outside already pushing you to move faster. You don't change into your uniform. You've been wearing it since yesterday. You just make it presentable. That means straightening the collar, smoothing the creases enough to make them look intentional, and refastening any buttons that work themselves loose while you slept on the floor. The fabric is coarse and stiff, a khaki cotton that was never soft to begin with, and has only gotten worse with time. It scratches against your skin, especially along your shoulders and around your waist where the belt digs in. The smell isn't fresh. There's no laundry service waiting to take away the grime of the last week, sometimes the last month. You wash it when you can, but when you can usually means standing in a line at a shallow wash basin on a rest day that might never come. More often, you just beat the dust out of it, hang it in the sun for a few hours, and call that clean enough. The sweat stains along the armpits and back are permanent now, baked into the fibres by heat and time. You get used to it because you have to, but it's still the first thing you notice when you pull the jacket tighter and fasten the belt. The belt itself is another kind of misery. It's thick, stiff leather that digs into your hips and lower ribs. You pull it tight because a loose belt will earn you an immediate correction, the kind delivered in front of everyone. The metal buckle catches the light as you fasten it, and you feel the weight of the pouches hanging off it. The ammo pouch on one side, the bayonet sheath on the other, canteen behind your hip. Each one has to sit just right. If they swing when you march, it's your fault. If they rattle, it's your fault. If anything is missing, it's more than your fault. It's an offence that could cost you more than just comfort. Your trousers are tucked into your puttees, long strips of cloth wound tightly around your lower legs from ankle to knee. They're meant to keep mud out and support your calves, but mostly they just trap heat and sweat until your skin itches so badly you'd trade half your rations for a minute of scratching. If you wrap them too loosely, they'll start to slip while you march, and you'll spend the rest of the day with fabric bunching around your ankles. Wrap them too tight, and your legs will throb before you're halfway through drills. Then there are the boots, or rather, the Jika tabi. The split-toe design is meant for grip, but the thin soles make you feel every stone and root you step on. They're already damp from the morning dew, the canvas stained darker where the rubber sole meets the fabric. You pull them on anyway because there's no alternative, tying them snug to keep the heel from rubbing raw spots into your skin. The moment you stand, you feel that slight shift of grit inside, a reminder that comfort isn't part of this uniform. Your cap is the last piece. Khaki cotton, stiff brim, a star on the front that's supposed to symbolise the Imperial Army, but mostly just catches dust. It sits low over your forehead, cutting the glare of the sun, but also trapping heat against your head. The chin strap isn't for decoration. You keep it in place, because if the wind or a sudden movement knocks it off, you'll be the one catching the sergeant's attention. And once you have that attention, it's not leaving until he's decided you've learned something. You run your hands over yourself one more time, checking for straight lines, making sure every button is fastened, every strap tight. The rifle goes over your shoulder, the leather sling squeaking against the rough fabric of your jacket. The weight is familiar now, a constant companion whether you're in drills, marching, or just standing in formation. You've been told more than once that the rifle is your life. You believe it, not because of the enemy, but because if you lose it, your own officers will make you wish you hadn't survived to tell them. There's no mirror in the barracks. You check yourself by habit, glancing down at your boots, the angle of your belt, the set of your cap. The man next to you does the same, not looking at you directly, but taking in whether you're squared away. It's not friendship, it's survival. If one man in the unit looks sloppy, the whole unit pays for it. Outside, the whistle blows again, sharper this time. It's the sound that means the inspection is over and the real physical work is about to start. You adjust the rifle strap, tug at your belt one more time, and step out into the light. The sun's a little higher now, the air warmer, and already you can feel the fabric sticking to your back where sweat is starting to form. You know it's only going to get worse once the drills begin. You take your place in formation, the line stretching out across the packed dirt. The ground is uneven, small rocks scattered everywhere, each one a future bruise waiting for your foot to find it. The sergeant starts pacing in front of the unit, eyes scanning for anything out of place. A crooked cap, a loose strap, a rifle sling hanging too low. He doesn't miss much. When he stops, the air feels heavier. The next order comes. Not for another inspection, but for movement. The kind of movement that means running until your lungs burn and your legs ache. The kind of movement that's less about building strength and more about seeing who's tough enough to keep going without complaint. You take a breath, tighten your grip on your rifle, and brace yourself for the day to turn from uncomfortable to exhausting. And just like that, the drills begin. You'd think with all the sweat, mud and dust clinging to you, cleaning yourself would be the first priority after drills. It isn't. Hygiene here isn't about feeling fresh. It's about doing the bare minimum to keep from falling apart. And even that's only when there's time or water to spare. Most days, there isn't. By the time you've gone through the morning routine, formation, roll call, breakfast, uniform checks, and the start of drills, your skin is already slick with sweat and grit. You feel it under your collar, between your fingers, behind your knees. It sticks to you, layer on layer, until you stop noticing it, unless you're still enough for long enough that it starts to itch. Bathing is a luxury, not a routine. In training camps, you might get a chance once a week, maybe twice if supplies are good. In the field, weeks can go by without so much as a proper rinse. When you do get water, it's cold more often than not. Warm water requires fuel and time, and both are better spent on things that keep the unit moving. The wash areas are nothing like a home bath. If you're lucky, it's a long trough or basin, maybe with a pump to fill it. More often, it's a bucket and a ladle, and whatever privacy you can get comes from turning your back to the rest of the men. Soap isn't guaranteed either. If you have it, it's a rough, harsh bar that strips the oil from your skin and leaves it feeling tight. More often, you're just using water to splash away the worst of the dirt, which doesn't do much against the smell of stale sweat ground into every thread of your uniform. You wash your face, neck, and hands first. Those are the parts most likely to be seen by an officer. Everything else gets whatever time and water you can spare. You can scrub at the salt crust on your collarbone all you want, but the shirt goes right back on over damp skin, and the heat and humidity make sure it's wet again within minutes. Your feet get special attention, but not out of comfort. If you don't take care of them, you won't be able to march. You sit on the edge of your sleeping mat, peel off your jigatabi, and unwind the puttees. The smell hits before the cloth is halfway off. It's sharp and sour, the kind of odour that doesn't fade no matter how often you rinse. Your toes are pale and wrinkled from being trapped in sweat, with patches of raw skin where the fabric rubbed too hard. If you've got powder, you use it sparingly, pressing it into the skin like it's worth its weight in gold. Then the socks, or bandages, depending on supply, go back on, followed by the puttees wound tight again. The whole ritual takes less than 5 minutes, but it's the difference between walking and limping by midday. Dental care is almost non-existent. Toothbrushes exist, but they're crude, often homemade from a frayed stick or whatever you can improvise. Toothpaste isn't something you expect to see. Sometimes you get powder, chalky, bitter, and about as pleasant as chewing on limestone. But most days, you just rinse your mouth with water and hope it's enough to keep the rot away. Cavities are common, toothaches even more so, and there's no dentist waiting to help. The field solution is to ignore it until you can't, and then either yank the tooth out yourself or find someone willing to do it for you. Lice are everywhere. It doesn't matter how clean you think you are. If you're in the barracks or the field, you have them. They live in the seams of your uniform, in the folds of your puttees, in your hair. You can feel them sometimes, a tiny crawl along the back of your neck or across your chest. Boiling your clothes will kill them, but boiling requires water and fuel, and both are rationed. So you pick them off when you see them, crush them between your fingernails, and go back to whatever you were doing. Fleas aren't much better, biting at your ankles during the night and leaving itchy welts that swell in the heat. The smell of the barracks tells you everything you need to know about the hygiene situation. It's a blend of unwashed bodies, damp fabric, oil from rifles, and the faint tang of whatever's cooking in the mess. There's no fresh air unless you leave the building, and even then, the stink clings to you. You carry it with you everywhere, a smell that seeps into your skin until you can't tell where it ends and you begin. When you're in the field, hygiene drops even further. There's no trough, no bucket, no chance to strip down and wash properly. You splash your face with whatever water you can find, maybe run a wet rag over your arms, and call it done. You change your socks if you have spares, which you usually don't, The uniform stays on day and night until the smell is just part of the background. If it rains, that's as close to a bath as you'll get, and you'll spend the rest of the day wearing clothes that are heavy and cold against your skin. There's no sense of feeling clean. There's only feeling slightly less dirty for a short while, until the next march, the next drill, the next hour sitting in the heat. You stop thinking about smelling good and start thinking about not smelling worse. It's not about comfort, it's about endurance. Because no matter how much you itch, no matter how greasy your hair gets, or how gritty your skin feels, there's no pause in the schedule to fix it. You get in line, you take your orders, and you keep moving. And the moment you're done with whatever cleaning you managed, the next round of physical work undoes it completely. The sweat comes back, the dust settles in, and you're right back where you started. You've barely finished whatever half-hearted attempt at cleaning yourself you could manage before the whistle blows again. That sound isn't just an order, it's a warning. Drills are starting, and drills mean the next few hours will strip away whatever energy you thought you had left. You grab your rifle, sling it over your shoulder, and fall into formation with the rest of the unit. The ground is already warm underfoot if it's summer, and hard as stone if it's winter. Either way, it's going to feel worse by the end. The sergeant doesn't waste time with speeches. His job isn't to inspire you. It's to break you down and make you move until your body reacts without your brain having to catch up. He barks the first command, march, and the entire unit lurches forward in perfect unison. The sound of dozens of boots hitting the dirt at the same time is sharp and rhythmic, a constant reminder that no one here moves as an individual. You keep your eyes fixed on the back of the man in front of you, matching his pace exactly, every step falling into the same beat. The march is just the warm-up. It's fast enough to get your heart rate up, long enough to make your calves burn, and deliberate enough that your mind has to stay locked in to avoid falling out of sync. The gravel crunches under your boots, the rifle bounces slightly against your shoulder with every step, and sweat starts to form along your back almost immediately. You don't wipe your forehead. You don't adjust your sling. You keep moving because stopping is not an option. After the march comes the running. Not a jog. Running, full pace, in formation. The pack stays tight, and if you fall behind, the whole unit feels it. The sergeant knows exactly who's starting to flag, and his voice cuts through the air, pushing you harder. Your breath starts to come faster. The dried taste of dust mixing with the metallic tang in your mouth. The rifle feels heavier now, pressing down on your shoulder and pulling against the strap. Then comes the rifle drills. Standing in formation again, you grip the weapon in front of you and follow the shouted commands. Present arms, shoulder arms, fix bayonet, remove bayonet, sling arms, repeat over and over, each movement precise and sharp. Your hands start to ache from gripping the wood and metal, your wrists stiffening as the repetition builds. The sun creeps higher, and the weight of the uniform becomes more obvious with every passing minute. The fabric traps the heat against your skin, sweat pooling along your spine and soaking into the waistband of your trousers. Once the rifle work is done, it's time for calisthenics. Push-ups in the dirt, sit-ups with your rifle balanced across your chest, squats until your legs feel like they're going to give out. There's no set number. The only goal is to keep going until the sergeant decides you've had enough. And enough is always well past the point where your muscles start to shake. The dirt gets into your hands, your sleeves, the knees of your trousers. You can feel the grit grinding against your skin with every movement. Just when you think you're done, the whistle blows again, and you're back on your feet for more marching. This time with a twist. Weighted packs go on, straps digging into your shoulders, and the route takes you uphill through patches of loose gravel that shift under your feet. The puttees around your calves trap the heat and make every step feel like you're dragging weights. You keep your pace because slowing down would bring the sergeant's attention straight to you, and no one wants that. The drills don't stop for weather. If it's raining, you march in the rain. The mud clings to your boots, making each step heavier. If it's hot, the sun bakes you until the air feels like it's pressing against your chest. If it's cold, your breath fogs the air. Your fingers go numb on the rifle, and every inhale feels like it's cutting into your throat. None of it matters. The commands keep coming, and you keep moving. By mid-morning, your uniform is plastered to you, the belt digging in harder now that the fabric beneath is soaked. Your hands smell faintly of oil from the rifle, mixed with the sour tang of sweat. You're tired, but you can't show it. Any sign of fatigue, slouching, lagging, even breathing too heavily, can get you pulled out for special attention, which usually means more drills on your own while the rest of the unit watches. When the sergeant finally calls a halt, it's not a rest. It's just a pause between punishments. You're ordered to stand at attention, eyes forward, rifle in place, as the officer steps in to inspect again. There's no sign of approval, no acknowledgement that you've been moving non-stop for hours. Just a quick scan, a nod to the sergeant, and the next command. The worst part of the drills isn't the pain, it's the knowledge that there's no finish line. This isn't training for a test you'll pass and move on from. It's your daily reality. Tomorrow will be the same. The day after that will be the same. The only variation is whether it's harder, longer, or both, and right now, as the whistle blows again, and the unit moves out once more, you know it's not over yet, not even close. The transition from drills to marching isn't really a change, it's just a new shape for the same punishment. The difference now is distance. Drills are about speed, precision, and following orders without hesitation. Marching is about wearing you down mile after mile until you can keep moving purely out of habit. It starts with the sergeant's voice, sharp and loud, calling the column to order. You shift the rifle on your shoulder, tighten the straps of your pack, and feel the familiar weight settle across your back like an anchor you can't put down. The pace is steady at first. Your boots hit the dirt in perfect sync with the men around you, the sound of each step blending into a single heavy rhythm. The gravel crunches underfoot, dust rising in small clouds that stick to your sweat and cling to your uniform. The straps of the pack cut into your shoulders, the edges rubbing the same raw spots they did yesterday. You can already feel the heat building inside your boots, your toes pressing against the front with every stride. The terrain changes as you move. Sometimes it's a straight, flat road, the kind that feels endless because nothing around you changes. Other times it's uphill, the incline slight at first, then steeper until your calves start to burn. The loose rocks on the slope shift under your feet, and you have to work harder to keep your balance. The weight of the rifle on your shoulder seems to double, pressing into the muscle until it feels like it's cutting through. Silence is the rule. No talking, no breaking the rhythm, no looking anywhere but forward. The only sounds are boots hitting the ground, gear rattling faintly, and the occasional call from the sergeant to close the gaps between ranks. You can't fall behind, not by a step. If you do, someone notices, and you're either barked at on the spot or called out later in front of everyone. Both are bad, but the second one usually comes with extra miles just for you. The hours blur together. Your world shrinks down to the man in front of you, the strip of road at his heels, and the constant ache in your legs. You stop noticing the scenery after the first hour. The rice fields, the scrub trees, the distant hills. They're just a backdrop to the sound of your own breathing and the thud of boots. If it's summer, the air is heavy and still, the heat radiating off the packed earth until it feels like you're walking through warm water. If it's winter, the cold sinks into your bones, each step sending a jolt of stiffness through your knees and hips. Blisters are inevitable. You feel them forming within the first few kilometres. Hot, tight spots on your heels, the sides of your toes, the balls of your feet. Once they burst, it's worse. The raw skin rubs against damp socks, and every step feels like someone pressing a lit match into your flesh. You keep walking anyway, because there's no stopping for injuries unless you can't physically stand. And even then, can't stand is judged by someone else, not you. The monotony is part of the punishment. After a while, your body moves on its own, but your mind is left to wander just enough to notice the discomfort. The sweat running into your eyes, the itch under your puttees, the way the rifle sling digs into the same spot over and over. You shift your grip on the weapon to ease the strain, but it doesn't help for long. The moment you find a less painful position, some part of you starts aching somewhere else. Water breaks are rare, and when they happen, they're short. You unsling your canteen, take a few quick swallows, and sling it back before the order to move comes again. The water is warm, tasting faintly of metal from the tin, but it's enough to wet your mouth and keep your throat from sticking shut. You ration it without thinking. You don't know how long it will be before you can refill. By the second or third hour, the march starts to feel like it's stretching time itself. Your legs are heavy, your back aches, and the thought of stopping becomes almost physical in your mind. But you don't stop. You don't slow down. The column moves and you move with it. Some men start limping a little, their steps uneven, but they fight to keep pace. No one wants to be the one pulled out and made to run double time to catch up. The destination isn't something you're told. You just keep going until the sergeant decides you've gone far enough. Sometimes that's back to the barracks. Sometimes it's straight into more drills. And sometimes it's just a brief halt before turning around and marching all the way back. You never know which it's going to be, and that uncertainty is part of the grind. When the halt finally comes, it's not a rest. It's a command to stop moving and stand in place, pack still on your back, rifle still in your hands. Feet planted on ground that now feels like it's tilting slightly under you. Your legs tremble from the effort of staying still after so much motion. The sweat cools on your skin, making you shiver even in warm weather. You want to sit, to drop the pack, to flex your feet and stretch your back. But you don't. You just wait for the next order. And when it comes, it's always the same. Move out. Because there's still more road ahead, and you're not done yet. The march never really ends. it just shifts into another kind of weight-bearing misery. The only thing more constant than the road under your feet is the gear on your back. It's not a choice. Every single piece you carry is regulation, issued whether you want it or not, and each one feels like it was designed to be just heavy enough to wear you down without giving you an excuse to stop. The rifle is the centerpiece, an Arisaka, long and solid, with a wooden stock and metal barrel that always seems heavier after the first hour of carrying it. Sling it over your shoulder, and it digs into the same muscle until it's sore to the touch. Hold it in your hands, and your forearms start to burn from the constant tension. Either way, it's with you from the moment you wake up until you finally collapse at night. Then there's the bayonet, sheathed at your side. It's not especially heavy by itself, but it swings just enough to knock against your leg with every step. A dull, repetitive thud that gets harder to ignore over time. The sheath is leather, stiff and hot in the sun, and the metal fittings heat up enough to burn if you leave it in direct light too long. You're expected to keep it spotless, oiled and sharp, even if you haven't used it in weeks. Rust is your problem, not the army's. The ammunition pouches hang off your belt, 2 in front, 1 on the side, each filled with clips of 6-point fit meft rounds. Full pouches pull at your hips, the leather creaking when you shift. Empty ones don't feel much lighter, because the stiffness still digs into your waist. Behind your hip sits the canteen. It's tin or aluminum, depending on when and where it was issued, and covered in a khaki cloth sleeve that's supposed to keep it from heating up. It doesn't. After a long march, the water inside is warm, tasting faintly of metal and fabric, and always a little less than you wish it was. Your pack is another story. It's not big, but it's heavy enough to matter when you're carrying it for hours. Inside is whatever the unit's decided you'll need that day. Spare puttees or socks if you're lucky, rations wrapped in paper or cloth, sometimes extra ammunition, or a small shovel for digging foxholes. The straps are thick canvas, rough against your shoulders, and no matter how you adjust them, one side always seems to bite more than the other. If the weather turns, you might have a rain cape rolled up and strapped across the top, its weight shifting with every step. Tucked somewhere in that pack, or hanging from your belt, is the mess kit. A metal tin and lid, dented from use, blackened from being set over open flames. It rattles faintly when you move, unless you wedge it tight with a rag. Inside, you might carry a spoon, maybe a pair of chopsticks carved from scrap wood, and whatever leftover food you managed to save from the last meal. Even empty, the mess kit feels like a dead weight you're obligated to keep track of. Lose it, and you're not eating until you can replace it, which might take weeks. Some men have extra gear, depending on their role. Bandoliers for machine gun ammo, signal flags, a map case, or a field radio that turns the burden from uncomfortable to back-breaking. You carry what you're told to carry, no matter how far or how fast you're moving. The logic is simple. The army doesn't care how it feels on your shoulders, only that it's there when someone needs it. Even the uniform itself counts as part of the load. The cotton jacket and trousers soak up sweat until they're heavy. The puttees wrapping your lower legs in damp, constricting layers. In the rain, everything doubles in weight, the fabric clinging to your skin and making every movement slower. In the heat, the gear traps the warmth against your body until you feel like you're walking in your own personal furnace. The worst part isn't the weight, it's the constant awareness of it. Every shift of the pack, every bounce of the rifle, every creak of the lever reminds you it's there. You can't forget it. You can't set it down unless ordered to. Even during short breaks, you often keep it on because taking it off means having to put it right back on again in seconds. And if you so much as leave a pouch unbuckled, it'll be noticed and you'll be reminded exactly why you're supposed to check your kit twice before stepping out. After hours of marching, the straps start to leave red lines across your shoulders. The weight pulls at your spine, making you lean forward without realizing it. Your hips ache from the belt, your lower back tightens, and the spot where the rifle sling rubs is already raw. But the column keeps moving, and so do you. The gear doesn't get lighter just because you're tired. If anything, it feels heavier, like the road itself is reaching up to drag it down. And when you finally reach wherever you're going, you don't drop it and rest. You keep it with you for whatever comes next. More drills, more digging, more orders shouted from somewhere just out of sight. The equipment is part of you now, as much as the uniform on your back and the sweat on your skin. And tomorrow, you'll pick it up again, right where you left off. The weight of the gear is bad enough on a clear, calm day. The weather makes sure you almost never get one. Whatever climate you're stationed in, it finds a way to make the day harder, and there's no adjusting your schedule around it. The Imperial Army doesn't wait for a breeze or a break in the clouds. You train, you march, you fight, no matter what's falling from the sky or pressing down from above. If it's summer, the heat isn't just uncomfortable, it's oppressive. The sun bears down until the air feels thick, every breath like pulling in steam. The cotton of your uniform soaks through fast, sticking to your back and chest, dark patches spreading under your arms. The belt traps that heat against your waist, the lever turning slick with sweat until it rubs your skin raw. The metal parts of your rifle heat up in your hands, and the barrel can burn you if you hold it wrong after standing still for too long in direct light. The water in your canteen turns hot within the first hour. The taste of metal and cloth sleeve stronger with every swallow. There's no real shade. The roads cut through open ground, and the training fields are bare by design, so there's nowhere to hide from the sun. You feel it in your head first, a dull, pressing weight that makes every step heavier. Your eyes sting from the glare, your mouth dries out between sips of water, and your heartbeat starts to pound harder, not from the pace, but from the heat itself. The sweat that soaks your clothes doesn't cool you down. It just stays there, making the fabric heavier, until it dries into a salty crust. Winter isn't any kinder. The cold cuts through the same uniform that traps heat so well in summer, leaving you shivering before the day even starts. Your breath fogs the air, clinging briefly before disappearing, and the skin on your fingers tightens until the knuckles feel stiff. There are no gloves unless you've scrounged a pair, or been issued them for a specific post, so your hands stay bare on the rifle. The wood and metal icy against your palms. After a few hours, your toes go numb inside your jikatabi, and every step feels like walking on stone. The puttees, meant to keep out mud, now just trap the cold against your legs. Wind is the worst. It finds every gap in your uniform, at your collar, your sleeves, the space where the trousers meet the belt, and pushes the cold deep inside. Your eyes water, your ears burn, and the skin across your face feels tight. Standing still during inspection in the winter is its own kind of punishment. You can't stamp your feet or move your arms to get warm without breaking formation, so you just lock your body in place and let the cold eat into you. And then there's the monsoon. When the rains come, they don't stop for hours or days. The air turns heavy and damp, the sky a constant grey, and the ground changes from packed dirt to thick mud almost instantly. Your uniform soaks through fast, every drop soaking into the cotton until it clings to you like a second skin. The pack on your back grows heavier, the straps cutting in deeper as the fabric sags with water. Your boots fill with it, every step sending a squelch up your legs, the moisture working into your socks until the skin starts to wrinkle and soften. The rifle becomes a problem in the rain. You're expected to keep it clean and dry no matter the conditions, which means wiping it down constantly, covering the barrel with a scrap of cloth if you can. The oil runs thin under the water, and rust waits for any chance to set in. Your hands are never truly dry, the skin between your fingers staying pale and tender until it starts to split. The mud slows every movement, and climbing even a slight incline becomes a test of balance as your feet slide backward with each step. Sleeping in the monsoon means lying down in damp clothes on a damp mat under a roof that drips in a dozen places. The air never feels fresh. It's thick with the smell of mildew and wet fabric, mixed with the sour tang of sweat that never got washed out. You wake up in the same wet uniform you fell asleep in, and the cycle starts again. No matter the season, there's no changing your schedule. The heat bakes you, the cold freezes you, the rain soaks you, and all of it happens while you're still expected to move, to drill, to march with the same pace and precision. There's no reward for pushing through it. No one hands you extra water on a hot day or extra blankets on a cold one. You endure it because there's no other option, and because the men on either side of you are enduring it too. The weather doesn't care if your pack is heavy, if your boots are full of water, or if your hands are shaking from cold. It just keeps coming. And the army doesn't care if the weather's against you. The orders are the same. Keep moving. The hotter it gets, the more you think about water. Not food, not rest, just something cold to drink. But in the army, especially out in the field, water isn't something you trust. It's something you take carefully, because there's always the risk it's carrying something that will make you wish you'd gone without. The canteen at your hip is your lifeline, but it's never as full as you want, and what inside is rarely fresh. At the start of the day, it might be filled from a central tank back at camp. The water there is usually boiled, most of the time, but usually isn't a guarantee. You can taste the metallic tang from the container it was stored in, mixed with whatever trace of the last cleaning powder they used. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it's still slightly warm from boiling, which is fine for safety, but miserable when you're trying to quench thirst in the heat. By the time you've been marching for a couple of hours, it's gone lukewarm, almost hot, with a flat taste that makes you want to spit it out, even as you keep drinking. Out on operations, you don't always have that central tank. You refill where you can, streams, rivers, wells in villages you pass through, but none of it is guaranteed safe. You're told to boil water when possible, but when possible doesn't mean much when you're on the move and the fire needed would give away your position. Some men carry purification tablets, but supplies run out fast, and the tablets themselves leave the water tasting like chemicals. If you're desperate, you drink straight from the source and hope for the best. You learn fast which water looks safe and which doesn't, but looks don't mean much. A clear stream can still carry enough bacteria to put you on your back for a week. Stagnant pools are an obvious no, but when you're drenched in sweat, lips dry, and the sun pounding on the back of your neck, obvious no turns into just a few mouthfuls. And that's all it takes for dysentery to work its way through the unit. Once it starts, it spreads fast. Men doubling over in the bushes, weaker by the hour, still expected to keep moving unless they literally can't stand. In the monsoon, the problem isn't finding water, it's keeping it drinkable. Rainwater fills everything, ditches, barrels, even the folds of your gear, but it picks up whatever's in its path. Runoff from animal pens, mud from the roads, debris from the roofs. It all ends up in the same puddles you might be tempted to scoop from. The army tells you not to, but when your canteen is empty and there's no refill point for hours, that advice becomes hard to follow. In winter, water is harder to find, but when you do get it, it's often painfully cold. Filling your canteen from a half-frozen stream means plunging your hands into water that numbs them instantly, and drinking it leaves your stomach clenching from the chill. You don't want to drink too much at once, but you can't afford to drink too little either. Not when dehydration will drain your strength faster than hunger. Even when the source is clean, water isn't infinite. You ration it without thinking, taking small sips instead of long gulps, holding it in your mouth before swallowing to trick your body into feeling satisfied. You watch the level in the canteen drop and start counting how many more hours you can stretch it. Sometimes you skip drinking altogether during short breaks, saving it for when the thirst really starts to burn. That works for a while, until the heat catches up, your head starts pounding, and your legs feel like they're moving through mud even on dry ground. Running out entirely is a worst case scenario, but it happens. A long march under the sun, a bad supply line, a delayed refill. Any one of those means finishing the day with an empty canteen and nothing to refill it from. Your lips crack, your tongue feels thick, and your thoughts slow down in a way that's hard to notice until you make a mistake. Out here, a mistake can be as simple as missing an order or stumbling in formation, and neither ends well for you. Water should be a relief, but in the army it's just another thing to worry about. Too little and you weaken. Too much from the wrong place and you're sick. Every sip is a calculation. Every refill a small gamble. And no matter how careful you are, there's never enough of it to feel comfortable. And as soon as you've taken that last careful swallow, the orders keep coming. The next march, the next drill, the next stretch of road is waiting. And thirst is just one more weight you carry with you. If the water situation feels like a gamble, the food isn't much better. It's just a different kind of losing bet. In the barracks, you at least know what you're getting. Rice, barley, miso soup, pickled vegetables. Maybe a scrap of fish if the supply line was generous that week. Out in the field, none of that is guaranteed. The further you are from supply depots, the smaller and stranger the meals get. Field rations come in simple paper or cloth wrappings, usually just enough to keep the food together until you're ready to eat. A lot of the time, it's onigiri, rice balls, packed tight and sometimes filled with pickled plum or salted fish. The salt isn't for taste, it's to keep the rice from going bad too quickly. Even then, by the second or third day, the rice starts to harden, the edges dry, and the filling turns sour. You eat it anyway because there's no alternative. When fresh rice isn't available, you get hardtack biscuits or dried barley cakes. They're dense, brittle, and taste like flour dust, but they keep for weeks. You soak them in whatever hot liquid you can manage, soup if you have it, water if you don't, to make them chewable. Some men just bite down and deal with the ache in their jaw. If you're unlucky, they've picked up the damp somewhere along the line and gone soft with mould. You scrape off the worst spots and keep going. Dried fish is common. It comes in thin strips, salty enough to make you thirsty, chewy enough to work your jaw until it aches. Sometimes it's fresh enough to be tolerable. Sometimes it's been sitting in storage long enough that the smell clings to your fingers for the rest of the day. There's also dried seaweed, which can be eaten as it is or dropped into hot water to bulk up a thin soup. It doesn't fill you, but it gives the illusion of more in the bowl. Vegetables are rare in the field, unless you're near a village where they can be taken or traded for. Fresh ones don't last long, so most of the time you get pickled versions. Cabbage, radish, cucumber, that have been packed in brine for months. They're sharp, salty, and sometimes so strong they make your eyes water. It's flavour though, and that's enough to make you eat every piece. Protein is scarce. Meat, when it shows up, is usually canned. Small tins of beef or pork that smell more of the can than the meat inside. Canned sardines are another common sight. The oil inside thick and clinging, coating your lips long after you've finished. Eggs are rare enough that they feel like a luxury, and when they do turn up, they're often already half-boiled or fried back at camp, cold by the time they reach you. The portions are small. You're burning thousands of calories every day marching, drilling, carrying gear, but the food barely covers the basics. Hunger becomes a constant background noise, not sharp enough to stop you from moving, but always there. You start eating slower, trying to stretch the time between the first bite and the last, even though it doesn't make you fuller. Some men hoard part of their ration for later, but it's a risk. If someone catches you, it's considered selfish and punishable. When supplies run low, the meals get even worse. Rice is bulked out with barley, millet, or even chopped sweet potato to make it last. Soup becomes little more than hot water, with a few scraps floating in it. Pickled vegetables are replaced with whatever can be foraged, wild greens, edible roots, sometimes even insects when nothing else is available. You don't think about whether you want to eat them. You think about whether they'll keep you moving for another few hours. Cooking in the field is quick and rough. A small fire if there's time, a mess tin balanced over it, the food heated just enough to take the chill off. In the rain, you eat cold. In the cold, you eat fast, before the food freezes to the tin. There's no seasoning beyond salt, and sometimes not even that. If you're near a supply truck or depot, you might get miso paste to stir into boiling water. A thin broth that at least tastes like something. The worst days are when the supply line breaks completely. You're left with whatever's in your pack and whatever you can find along the route. That might mean going without a real meal for a day or two, surviving on a few bites of dried fish and whatever water you can find. Your stomach cramps from the emptiness, but you still move because stopping isn't an option. Food stops being about enjoyment within the first week. It's just fuel, calories in, energy out. You eat what you're given, you eat it fast, and you don't think about what you'd rather have. That part of you shuts off early, and the moment the meal's over, the work starts again, burning through every bite before the day is halfway done. After weeks of eating just enough to keep moving and drinking water that's always a calculated risk, your body starts showing it. You get tired faster, the aches last longer, and the little things, like a cough or a rash, don't go away the way they used to. Out here, healthy doesn't mean feeling good. It means not being so sick or injured that you can't stand in formation when the whistle blows. When something does go wrong, your options are limited. The army has medics, but their first job is to keep you functional, not to make you comfortable. You report to the aid tent only when you can't hide the problem anymore, because drawing attention to an illness can mean being pulled from your unit, and that's not always a mercy. Being labelled unfit can follow you long after you've recovered. The aid tent itself isn't much. In training camps, it's a small building with a few cots, the smell of antiseptic barely covering the odour of sweat and damp fabric. In the field, it's a canvas tent with a wooden table, a few stools, and supplies stacked in crates. There's no privacy. Men are treated in plain view of each other, one after another, the doctor or medic working quickly to move you along. The doctor could be an actual trained physician, or just a medical corpsman with a few months of instruction. Either way, their tools are basic. Bandages, iodine, morphine if you're badly hurt, sulphur powder if the supply chain hasn't run dry. Antibiotics aren't part of the picture. They're still new, expensive, and scarce. If you get an infection, they clean it, dress it, and hope your body fights it off. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. For minor issues, blisters, mild fevers, muscle strains, you're expected to manage them yourself. Blisters are lanced with a sterilised needle if you're lucky, with a dirty one if you're not. Fevers get cold compresses or nothing at all. Muscle pain gets ignored. You walk it off or you don't. The doctor saves their real attention for wounds, serious illnesses, or injuries that could take you out of action entirely. Wounds are a different story. If you're cut, they'll clean it with iodine that burns like fire, then bandage it tightly. Stitches are done quickly, with thick thread, and no anaesthetic beyond maybe a shot of morphine if you're lucky. If the wound's deep, you might be laid up for a few days, but only if the unit can spare you. More often, you're back on your feet with the bandage still fresh, hoping it doesn't tear open during the next march. Illnesses spread fast in close quarters. Colds, flu, dysentery. Once one man gets it, the whole barracks is coughing, sneezing, or worse within a week. The doctor's answer is usually rest and fluids, but rest just means being told to stay in camp while still cleaning gear or helping with basic chores. If it's bad enough to keep you from standing in formation, you might get an actual day in the cot, but it's rare. The worst fear is something that won't heal on its own. Malaria, pneumonia, severe infections. Those can take you out completely, and not always in a way that leaves you coming back. If the doctor decides you're too sick to stay, you might be sent to a field hospital, which means you're off the line, but facing an entirely different kind of hardship. Overcrowded wards, limited supplies, and the constant sound of men coughing or groaning all around you. Dental problems barely register on the priority list. A toothache gets you aspirin if there's any left. An abscess might get lanced. A badly decayed tooth? Pulled out on the spot with whatever tools are available, usually without anaesthesia. The idea is simple. Remove the problem so you can eat and fight again, not so you can smile without pain. Seeing the doctor doesn't mean you're fixed. It means you're patched enough to keep going. You walk out of the aid tent with your arm in a sling, your foot wrapped, or a packet of tablets that may or may not help. The whistle will still blow the next morning, and you'll still be expected to be there, ready to march, drill, or dig. Health in this army isn't about feeling well. It's about not being broken enough to stop. And if you are broken enough, you find out quickly that the line between treatment and endurance is thinner than you thought. Even if the doctor patches you up, even if you manage to avoid serious illness or injury, there's one thing you can't escape: where you sleep. Or rather, where you lie down for a few hours each night. Because sleep suggests something restful, and this is anything but. The barracks in training are cramped. The barracks in the field are worse. And the one thing they have in common is that none of them are built for comfort. In a training camp, the sleeping quarters are long wooden buildings with rows of mats laid directly on the floor. Each man gets just enough space to lie flat, and if you're taller than average, you curl your knees to avoid kicking your neighbour. The mats are thin, the straw inside old and flattened from years of use. They hold the smell of every man who's ever sweated into them, and if you're unlucky, the smell of mildew from leaks in the roof. You don't get a pillow unless you improvise one from a rolled up jacket or your own pack. In the field, it's even less. You might have a canvas ground sheet if supplies allowed, but more often you're lying directly on the earth. Packed dirt if you're lucky, mud or gravel if you're not. The pack that breaks your shoulders all day becomes the thing you put under your head at night. Never mind the straps and buckles digging into your neck. Your uniform stays on, because stripping down isn't an option. If it's cold, you keep every layer you have. If it's hot, you still keep most of them to protect against mosquitoes and other pests. The roof above you might be a thin canvas tent, a half shelter propped up with sticks, or nothing at all. In the rain, water runs under your mat or pools where you're lying, soaking through your clothes. In the cold, the wind slips in through every gap, numbing your feet and stiffening your fingers before morning. In summer, the air inside a tent turns heavy and still, smelling of sweat and damp cloth, every breath warm and stale. Noise is constant. Men cough, snore, shift in their sleep. Someone gets up to relieve himself and comes back clumsy in the dark, stepping on mats or brushing past boots. Outside, there's the sound of boots on gravel, rifles clinking against belts, or the occasional shout from a guard post. You learn to sleep through it, not because it stops bothering you, but because exhaustion eventually wins. Insects are everywhere. Mosquitoes whine in your ear. Fleas bite at your ankles, and lice crawl in the seams of your clothing and bedding. You might wake up scratching at your scalp or the inside of your arm, knowing the itching will still be there tomorrow. If you're in the field, you might share your sleeping space with ants, spiders, or worse, rats looking for food scraps. You feel them before you see them. The light scurry across your leg in the dark. The lack of real rest builds over time. One bad night leaves you sluggish. A week of bad nights leaves you running on instinct alone. You wake up sore from the hard ground, your lower back stiff, your shoulders tight from curling around your rifle or pack, your legs cramp from being locked in the same position for hours. You never wake up refreshed, you wake up less tired than you were when you lay down, and that's the best you can hope for. The worst part is knowing that this is normal. There's no better bed waiting somewhere else. No soft mattress, no clean sheets, no quiet room to recover in. Whether you're in a permanent barracks or a temporary bivouac, the result is the same. A few hours of uneasy sleep in conditions that make your body ache before the next day even starts. And when the whistle blows in the morning, you get up from the same mat, in the same uniform, with the same aches, and start the whole routine over again. Fatigue becomes part of you. Not a passing feeling, but the baseline you live at. The first thing you hear after a bad night's sleep isn't birds or the sound of a quiet morning. It's the voice of someone whose rank gives them the right to make your life harder. Commanding officers don't just give orders in the Imperial Japanese Army. They shape the entire environment you live in. Every schedule, every drill, every punishment, every small moment of relief or misery runs through them, and the rules they enforce reach into every corner of your day. At the top of the ladder, the officers are polished, uniforms pressed, boots spotless, caps perfectly straight. You almost never see them sweating, not because they aren't working, but because their work isn't carrying a rifle for 20 kilometres or digging trenches in the rain. They're there to watch, to measure, and to correct. Below them, the non-commissioned officers, the sergeants and corporals, are the ones in your face, making sure you carry out those corrections down to the smallest detail. The rules aren't written in some manual you get to study. You learn them through repetition, and when you break them, you learn through punishment. Your uniform has to be worn exactly right. Belt tight, buttons fastened, puttees wound without a single loose end. Boots shined even if you've just come back from a muddy march. Rifle clean enough that the officer can run a finger along the barrel without picking up dust or oil. Formations are exact. You don't just stand in a line, you stand at the exact spacing, with your eyes locked forward, chin in, and weight balanced. Any shifting, fidgeting, or looking around is noticed, and the correction is immediate. Drills follow strict timing, and there's no room for slowing down unless ordered. If the officer says run, you run. If he says stop, you stop. If he says do it again, you do it again until he decides it's enough. The rules go beyond what you do. They reach into how you think. You address officers with the proper honorifics, your tone sharp and respectful no matter how tired you are. You respond to orders instantly, without hesitation or questions. Asking why isn't just frowned upon. It's seen as disrespectful, even insubordinate. You move when told, not when you're ready. You eat when allowed, not when you're hungry. You rest when the schedule says so, even if you're ready to drop hours earlier. There's also the unspoken rule of presence. Never let them see you slacking, even for a second. If you're standing still, your posture is perfect. If you're moving, your pace is strong and steady. If you're working, your effort is obvious. The officers don't just expect obedience, they expect the appearance of discipline at all times. That means hiding fatigue, suppressing pain, and swallowing frustration until it doesn't show on your face. Mistakes don't just affect you, they affect the entire unit. If your rifle's dirty, the whole squad might be punished with extra drills. If you're late to formation, the rest of the men wait in position while the officer reminds everyone what happens when someone's not ready. This isn't about fairness, it's about pressure. When the group suffers for one man's failure, the group makes sure no one fails again. Sometimes the rules change without warning. A new officer takes command, and suddenly the spacing in formation shifts, the pace of the march increases, or the way you salute changes. It doesn't matter if the old way was fine. The new way is the only way now. And getting it wrong earns the same response as breaking a long-standing rule. You adapt fast, or you get called out. Even downtime is shaped by the officers. If you're off duty, you're still under watch. You can't wander far, you can't slack on personal appearance, and you can't let your rifle out of reach. Inspections can happen at any time, and failing one means starting your rest period over with push-ups, runs, or cleaning gear in silence. The result is a constant edge in the way you carry yourself. You're never fully relaxed because you never know when a command will be shouted, when a rule will be enforced, or when you'll be made an example of. Sleep, food, drills, even standing still. All of it happens under someone else's terms. And every man in the unit learns the same truth. The rules don't just control what you do. They control who you are while you're here. Rules in the Imperial Japanese Army aren't suggestions. And discipline isn't something handled with a quiet word or a note in a file. When you make a mistake, or when someone in authority decides you have, the punishment is meant to be felt, remembered, and, if they're doing their job right, feared by everyone watching. Some punishments are immediate and physical. Extra drills are common, but not the kind you've already been doing all day. These are faster, harder, and go on longer, deliberately push past the point where your muscles give out. You're ordered to run in full gear until your legs threaten to buckle, or to do push-ups in the mud while the sergeant walks among the ranks, shouting at anyone who slows down. In the cold, the push-ups leave your hands numb against the frozen ground. In the heat, the sweat blinds you as it runs into your eyes. There are also corrective standing punishments, ordered to hold a position for hours without moving. Kneeling in full gear on rough gravel, standing at attention with your rifle over your head, or sitting in the Caesar position on wooden planks until your legs go completely numb. Pain starts fast, but the real punishment is that you're not allowed to shift or stretch. You just endure it until you're told to stop. Public humiliation plays a role too. Sometimes, if you're singled out, you'll be made to stand in front of the entire unit while your mistake is read out loud. The officer making sure everyone knows exactly what you did wrong. You're expected to stand there, eyes forward, as the rest of the men watch in silence. No one laughs. They know it could be them next. But the shame sticks. If the offence is seen as serious, insubordination, neglect of duty, damaging equipment, the punishment escalates. You might be ordered to run laps around the camp until you collapse, then be forced to get back up and finish. You might be given corrective labour, like hauling heavy loads back and forth with no real purpose other than breaking you down physically. In some cases, you're assigned menial, degrading tasks, cleaning latrines by hand, scrubbing floors with a rag until your knuckles are raw, carrying buckets of water from one end of camp to the other just to pour them out and do it again. Physical strikes are not off the table. A slap across the face, a blow to the side of the head, a kick to the leg. It's not unusual and it's not hidden. In some units, the officers see it as part of enforcing discipline, a quick and visible reminder to the rest of the men. You learn to take it without flinching, because flinching can be seen as disrespect. For repeated offences or something the officers see as a challenge to authority, the punishments can turn brutal. Stress positions for hours at a time, denial of food for a day or more, or being forced to carry your full pack and rifle continuously, even when eating or resting. In extreme cases, you might be confined, locked in a small, bare room or a makeshift cell, given minimal food and water, and left with nothing but your thoughts and the sound of drills outside. The goal isn't just to make you pay for what you did, it's to make sure you don't do it again, and to make everyone else think twice before making the same mistake. That's why punishments often happen in front of the whole unit. You see the consequences in real time. You hear the orders barked over the sound of someone's laboured breathing, and you know it could be you next. Even minor infractions, speaking out of turn, moving in formation without permission, failing to clean your rifle properly, are met with some form of consequence. Nothing goes unnoticed, and nothing is excused. The constant pressure of potential punishment hangs over every action, making you think before you take even the smallest step. By the time you've been in the army for a while, you don't just follow the rules to avoid the work. You follow them because the image of what happens when you don't is burned into your mind, and the officers know it. That's how the system keeps running. Once you've learned the rules and what happens if you break them, the next lesson is how to fight. And it's taught in a way that leaves no gap between training and the real thing. Combat training in the Imperial Japanese Army isn't about careful, measured instruction. It's about hammering techniques into your body until you can perform them without thinking. Even if your muscles are screaming, even if your mind is fogged with exhaustion. It starts with the rifle. You don't just learn to aim and fire, you learn to handle it as if it's an extension of your arm. That means endless hours of loading and unloading, practicing with live rounds in some cases, and with blanks in others, until the movements are as fast and smooth as breathing. You practice firing from standing, kneeling, prone, and while advancing. Rifle braced against your shoulder, sight lined up, trigger squeezed in one smooth motion. Accuracy matters, but speed is emphasized more, because hesitation in battle is treated like failure. Then comes the bayonet training. You're issued one, and you'll be expected to use it. The instructors don't soften the blows. They want you driving that blade forward with enough force to put a hole through a training dummy made of layered bamboo, straw, and wood. You thrust, pull back, slash, and stab again in a set rhythm. The sergeant pacing along the line, shouting corrections or striking your stance with a stick if your form slips. Sweat runs into your eyes, your shoulders burn, but you keep going until your arms shake. Hand-to-hand combat is taught with the same intensity. Throws, joint locks, and strikes are drilled in pairs, and you don't just mime them, you use full force. If you get thrown, you hit the ground hard. If you're on the attack, you aim to put your partner down quickly. The bruises pile up, and no one slows down for someone nursing a sore shoulder or twisted wrist. The idea is that in real combat, there's no time for gentle practice, so the training shouldn't be gentle either. Grenade drills are part of the rotation too. You practice with weighted wooden replicas first, learning the grip, the throw, and the timing. Then, when the instructors think you're ready, you use live ones. The first time is always tense. The weight in your hand feels different when you know it's real, and your ears ring from the blast, even if you're far enough away. You're expected to throw quickly, accurately, and then move without hesitation. Because the moment you stop to admire your aim could be the moment you're hit in return. Field exercises blur the line between training and deployment. You're ordered to advance across open ground under simulated fire, sometimes with live rounds snapping overhead from machine guns mounted well above head height. You dig foxholes until your hands blister, set up firing positions, and then move again when the whistle blows. Every exercise is timed and evaluated, and mistakes are pointed out loudly, often in front of everyone. Night training is worse. You're woken in the dark, ordered to assemble with full gear, and then led out into the field. The only light comes from the moon, or what little you can carry. You navigate uneven terrain, crawl through mud, and sometimes stage mock assaults on designated positions. You stumble over roots, trip into ditches, but you're expected to keep your weapon ready and your movement silent. Fatigue is part of the test. It's about seeing whether you can function when your body wants nothing more than to stop. There's no padding in this kind of training. You'll leave with bruises on your ribs, cuts on your hands, and muscles so sore that every movement the next day feels like work. But you still show up for the next session, because missing it isn't an option. The instructors aren't interested in how much pain you're in. They're interested in whether you can push through it and keep fighting. By the time you've been through weeks of it, the distinction between training and combat starts to blur. The sounds, the commands, the pace, they're all designed to feel real, so that when it actually is real, you react without hesitation. The only difference is that in training, you walk back to the barracks afterward. In combat, there's no guarantee you'll walk back at all. Training is meant to prepare you for the battlefield, but no amount of drills or exercises can make the real thing feel routine. The moment you're actually in combat, you know the difference. In training, the worst that happens is a shouted correction or a bruise. In combat, the worst that happens is you don't come back at all. And once the first shot is fired, everything changes. The first thing you notice is the sound. In training, gunfire is controlled, predictable. In battle, it's chaotic. Rifles cracking, machine guns rattling in bursts, explosions slamming into the air so hard you feel them in your chest. The noise is constant and uneven, overlapping in ways that make it hard to tell where it's coming from. It doesn't matter how many times you've been told to keep your head clear. Your instincts pull you down, make you want to stay behind cover and not move. But orders still come, and you still have to follow them. The second thing is the confusion. In drills, you know the plan from start to finish. In combat, the plan falls apart within minutes. Smoke drifts in from the wrong direction. A section of the line slows down. An officer shouts something you can't hear clearly. You move because the men next to you are moving, and half the time you don't know exactly what you're moving toward. The terrain is never as clean as it is in training. Roots catch your feet, mud sucks at your boots, and rocks shred your palms when you dive for cover. Then there's the sight of it. In training, your target is a straw dummy or a paper silhouette. In battle, it's another human being, moving, shooting back, sometimes close enough that you can see the expression on their face. You're told to focus on the job, not the person, but that line blurs fast. The first time you fire and see someone drop, you feel it in your stomach. You tell yourself it's just the shock of the moment, but it doesn't go away the next time. The smell is something you never prepare for. In training, it's gun oil, sweat, and dust. In combat, it's smoke, blood, and the sharp chemical sting of explosives. The air gets thick with it, sticking in your throat and making your eyes water. You breathe shallow to keep it out, but you can't escape it entirely. Fear is everywhere, even if you try to hide it. You've been told 100 times to keep your head down and your weapon ready, to move when ordered and never freeze. But the reality is that you're constantly aware that any moment could be your last. You feel it when a bullet snaps past your ear, when a shell lands close enough to knock the wind out of you, when someone next to you goes down and doesn't get back up. Training doesn't prepare you for the way that hits, how fast it happens, how final it is. Communication breaks down fast. In training, the shouting is loud but clear. In battle, the sound of gunfire drowns it out. You watch for hand signals, try to read lips, follow the movements of the man in front of you because you can't hear the sergeant's voice over the chaos. Orders change mid-step, and sometimes you don't realise it until you're moving in the wrong direction. Fatigue sets in faster than you'd think. Adrenaline keeps you going at first, but it doesn't last. You're carrying full gear, moving from cover to cover, firing, reloading, keeping your head low. Your body burns through whatever energy you had, and soon every movement feels slower, heavier. You don't feel hungry or thirsty until the fight slows, and then it hits you all at once. The difference that matters most is that in training, there's a finish line. In combat, you don't know when it ends. Sometimes it's minutes, sometimes hours. Sometimes you think it's over, only for a fresh burst of fire to send you back down into the dirt. When it finally does stop, the quiet feels strange, like your ears are still waiting for the next shot. And when it's done, you don't walk away untouched. Even if you're not hit, even if you're still standing, you carry the weight of what you've seen and done. The next time you hear a rifle crack, even in training, part of you will remember the real thing, and you'll know that training was never the same. Once the shooting stops, you'd think the worst is over. But in the Imperial Japanese Army, the aftermath can be just as bad. Injuries and sickness don't wait for the next battle. They spread through the unit like smoke through an open window. And there's no such thing as comfort while you recover. On the battlefield, the wounded are dealt with as quickly as the situation allows. If you can walk, you're told to make your own way back to a safe position. If you can't, someone drags you, pulls you, or hauls you onto a makeshift stretcher, a wooden pole with a piece of canvas tied between. There's no gentle handling. Every bump in the ground sends pain shooting through you, but no one has the time or strength to carry you carefully. First aid is basic. A field dressing from your own pouch, maybe a dose of iodine if the medic has it, and a tight bandage to slow the bleeding. Morphine exists, but it's scarce, saved for the worst cases. You grit your teeth because there's no choice. If the wound is bad enough to need proper treatment, you're sent back to a field hospital, if there is one within reach. Those are crowded, noisy, and smell of blood, sweat, and disinfectant that never seems to cut through the other smells. Injuries from combat aren't the only threat. Disease is a constant companion, especially in the field. Dysentery, malaria, pneumonia. None of them need enemy fire to put a man out of action. Latrines are often shallow pits in the ground, too close to where you eat and sleep. Flies are everywhere. Water isn't always boiled before use, and sometimes you drink it without thinking, because thirst outweighs caution. One man gets sick, and within days, half the barracks is doubled over with cramps or coughing through the night. Malaria is especially cruel in certain postings. You can feel fine in the morning, then by the afternoon your temperature is spiking, your head pounding, your muscles aching so badly you can't lift your rifle. Quinine is the standard treatment, but supplies run out often, and the bitter taste stays in your mouth for hours. Without it, you ride out the fever under a thin blanket, shivering and sweating by turns, hoping it breaks before you're ordered back on duty. Skin infections and foot rot creep up on you. The combination of constant marching, wet boots, and poor hygiene eats away at your feet until the skin cracks and peels. Every step burns. You keep them wrapped in whatever clean cloth you can find, but fresh bandages aren't always available. In tropical climates, any cut can turn into an ulcer in days. The doctors do what they can, but what they can do is limited. Comfort is a word that doesn't exist here. Your recovery happens in the same cramped, noisy space you live in when you're well. You lie on the same mat or bare ground, surrounded by coughing, groaning men. If you're lucky enough to be in a hospital tent, it's still crowded, the air heavy and hot in summer, damp and freezing in winter. There's no real rest. Medics come and go, men are carried in and out, orders are shouted, and you can hear the distant sound of drills or even combat. Meals don't improve when you're sick or hurt. You still get the same rations, sometimes less, if the unit is stretched thin. You choke down rice or barley with no appetite, knowing you need the calories but feeling like each bite is a chore. Water is rationed the same way, even if you're running a fever, and there's no guarantee you'll be left alone to heal. If you can stand, you can work. That might mean light duties, cleaning weapons, carrying supplies, or running messages, but it's still work, and it slows your recovery. The army doesn't like idle hands, and if you're breathing, they find something for you to do. Injuries and illness become part of life, just another layer of fatigue and discomfort. You don't think in terms of getting better, you think in terms of getting back to a state where you can function again. And once you're there, the routine starts all over, with the same risks waiting for you the next time you step into the field. After enough time in the Imperial Japanese Army, you stop expecting to feel good about anything. Morale isn't a rallying speech or a wave of pride that keeps you moving. It's whatever scrap of normalcy you can hold on to in between drills, marches and combat. For some men, that's a letter from home. For others, it's a cigarette passed around in the quiet before lights out. For most, it's just the knowledge that the day will end eventually, even if tomorrow looks exactly the same. The official line is that morale is built through discipline, unity, and honour. Officers talk about loyalty to the Emperor, the glory of sacrifice, and the duty of every soldier to give everything without hesitation. Those words might stir something in a fresh recruit, but in the field they feel distant, like they're meant for someone living in a different reality. When you're wet, hungry, tired and sick, honour is just a word you hear during speeches you're too exhausted to remember. Day-to-day morale depends on the smallest things. A decent meal after weeks of bad rations. A night where it doesn't rain. A drill that ends early because an officer is in a rare good mood. These moments don't erase the grind, but they take the edge off for a little while. You notice them more when they're gone, when every day is a chain of orders, punishments, and work with no break in the rhythm. The group you serve with plays a role too. Some units form a kind of unspoken pact. You help each other when you can, you share what little you have, and you keep an eye out for the man next to you. In others, it's every man for himself. The difference can come down to leadership, personalities, or simply how much strain the unit is under. Either way, no one says much about friendship or comradeship out loud. It's too risky to grow attached in a place where you never know who will still be there tomorrow. News from home can lift you up or drag you down. A letter that everyone's well makes you feel like there's still something to go back to. A letter with bad news, illness, loss, trouble in the village, sticks with you, pulling your mind away from where it needs to be. Sometimes letters don't come at all, and you start wondering if they were lost, delayed, or just never written. That wondering can eat at you more than bad news. Combat hits morale hardest. Even if you survive without a scratch, seeing men you trained with, marched with, maybe even slept beside in the barracks fall in front of you, changes the way you carry yourself. It's not dramatic. It's a slow shift. You move quieter. You talk less. You start thinking about how many times you can get lucky before you don't. No one says it out loud, but everyone feels it. The army tries to keep spirits up in its own way. There might be a brief entertainment, songs, a speech, sometimes even a small gift from a supply shipment like candy or sake. But it's rare, and it never lasts long. The next morning the same orders come, the same boots hit the same ground, and the small lift fades back into the usual weight. For most men, morale isn't about feeling good, it's about not feeling worse. You hold yourself together by lowering the bar. Don't expect comfort, don't expect relief, just expect to keep going. And if you can do that without thinking too much about how far there is left to go, you count it as a win. By the time you've been in long enough, your world narrows down to a simple calculation: make it through today. You stop thinking in terms of weeks or months, because the weight of all those days stacked together feels impossible. Instead, you wake up, you get through roll call, you survive the drills, the marches, the orders, and the long stretches of waiting. Then you lie down, and for a few hours you don't have to think about the next whistle, the next formation, the next time your name is called. It's not that you don't think about the future, you just don't let yourself think too far ahead. The war has no end date for you. There's no countdown, no promise that if you make it to a certain month, you'll go home. Tomorrow could be more drills, or it could be a march to the front line. You might be sent to dig defensive positions, or you might be told to pack your gear and move without explanation. You learn quickly that the less you expect, the less you're disappointed. Every day has its own rhythm. Morning starts with the same jolt. Officers barking, boots hitting the ground, the scramble to get everything in order before the first inspection. Then the day stretches out, filled with work that's either punishing in its intensity or dull enough to make you restless. The army doesn't like idle hands, so there's always something to do. Whether it's hauling supplies, cleaning weapons, or running messages, you keep moving because movement is easier than waiting for the next order to land. At night, the quiet isn't really quiet. Even when there's no gunfire in the distance, the camp has its own soundtrack. The low murmur of voices, the sound of men turning over on their mats, the occasional cough. You close your eyes and hope for rest, knowing it'll be shallow at best. Sometimes your mind wanders to what you'd be doing if you were home. Eating a proper meal, walking through your village, sleeping in a real bed. Those thoughts are dangerous. They make the gap between this life and your old one feel too wide to cross. Tomorrow is always uncertain, and that's the part that wears on you in ways the officers never see. You can prepare for drills, for marches, even for combat, but you can't prepare for not knowing which one you'll be facing when the sun comes up. That uncertainty becomes its own kind of weight, light enough to carry without breaking you, heavy enough that you feel it every moment you're awake. So you focus on the smallest goals. Make it to the next meal, even if it's barely worth eating. Make it through the next set of drills without drawing attention. Keep your gear in order so inspection goes faster. You string together enough of those small wins and you've made it to nightfall. Then you start over the next day. It's not the kind of survival that feels heroic. It's slow, grinding, and invisible to anyone who hasn't lived it. But in the Imperial Japanese Army, that's how most men make it through. Not by dreaming of the end, but by narrowing their world until it's only as big as the next step forward. And as long as you keep taking that step, you're still here. That's the reality of it. No matter how much the speeches talk about honour or glory, life as a Japanese soldier in the war wasn't built on those things. It was built on long days, short nights, and the constant grind of rules, work, hunger, fatigue, and the kind of uncertainty that eats at you slowly. Every man learned to carry it in his own way, but no one ever escaped it completely. If you were lucky, you made it home. If not, you became part of the long, unspoken truth of what serving really meant. And for the ones still standing, the war didn't end in a single moment. It just kept going until it finally stopped. That's why, when you look back at it now, the question isn't whether you would have been brave enough. It's whether you could have lived through the everyday part of it, the part no one wrote down in the reports. Because it wasn't just the battles that broke men. It was the days in between.